Have you been abused, neglected, experienced ACEs, survived trauma, or lived with dysfunctional household? Before beginning today's lesson, I want to give you a quick rundown of my trauma history so you have a better understanding of the journey I have been on from trauma to healing and hope. During the first 22 years of my life, I experienced tremendous trauma, but now live a life filled with tranquility and joy. I will fill these lessons with the stories of that journey. When I was 4 years old, an intoxicated parent attempted to drown myself and my 1-year-old sister. When I was 5, I was sexually molested for the first time by a 16-year-old neighbor. When I was 9, I was sexually molested by a 19-year-old neighbor when my mom sent me for a can of soup. When I was 10, I was repeatedly molested by my choir director. When I was 14, I was sexually accosted by a religious education director in the rectory where I worked in the evenings for the priests. When I was 16, I lost my virginity to date rape. When I was 16, later that year, I was attacked by a gang of youth downtown in Cincinnati. An officer in charge of that investigation asked my parents to take me to dinner when I was 17, after the trials were over, to celebrate the convictions. My parents allowed him to do so. However, he did not take me to dinner. He took me back to his apartment where he attempted to rape. When I was 21, I was involved in a bank robbery where a gun was held to my head and my coworker was stabbed 3 times with a hunting knife. Later that same year, 3 months later, the assailants would return to our main office where I had just moved, only this time the assailant who had held the gun to my head would pull the trigger and murder my coworker. My sister was a teller, 19 years old at the time. She had just asked to go on break, and the girl that was murdered was the one who had taken her place on the teller line. I had run from the bank and hiding behind row houses behind the plaza where the bank was, and came to face to face with an armed assailant who pointed his Luger at me. However, the gun misfired, and my life was yet again spared. Also, during the first 10 years of my life, my dad physically abused my sister and myself until he received counseling and then apologized for hitting us and told us he would never hit us again. My mother was a severe alcoholic, still is to this day at 83 years old. And my dad struggled to maintain a job, so therefore we struggled with keeping food in the house at times, and with financial issues and struggles. Lesson 5 is write an unconditional love prayer for someone who has hurt you. And that's a tough one to do. And it may irritate some people. And if that's the case, then if you're not ready, don't do it. But the valuable lesson in this one is that you are focusing only on the needs of the other person. Do not mention your own at all. And the way I did this was, I wrote this prayer for a person who had hurt me on a heart and soul level. And as I wrote it, and as I focused on this person, and let all of my own anger and sadness and disappointment be pushed to the side, and only focused on this person's pain and their own struggle and their healing needs, I was able to really identify that the reason this person had hurt me the way they had was because of their struggles. It truly didn't have anything to do with me. and it was about them. So, again, it's such a powerful, powerful healing lesson, and just creates an amazing amount of peace if you are able to write an unconditional love prayer for someone else. And if it feels right to burn it and send that energy into the universe afterwards, then do so. Obviously, safely in a fire pit outside or something. But yeah, it certainly created tremendous peace in my life each time I did it in regards to a person that had hurt me. Who is your unconditional love prayer embracing? If you feel as if you can share that with the Healing Place podcast audience and me, please comment on the YouTube video or reach out to us on any of the social media apps: Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter.